In and Out of the Stone Age, written by Sri K. Natwar Singh. Papua New Guinea was uncharted territory for me. On arrival, everything was a surprise. Parts of Papua New Guinea were still living in the Stone Age. Cannibalism, though no longer rampant, had not altogether disappeared. Mr. Singh, meet Bluebird. He is just out of jail. He killed the man who was misbehaving with his lady. He ate his victim's heart. He had felt no remorse but had walked to the nearest police post to give himself up. This incident took place in the summer of 1964 in Papua New Guinea. What was I doing in this big and rugged island north of Australia? I was invited by the Australian government to spend 10 days in Papua New Guinea. I was at the time rapporteur of the United Nations Committee on Decolonization. This territory was being administered by Australia. Strictly speaking, Australia was never a colonizing or imperialist country. Nevertheless, Papua New Guinea was included in the committee's agenda of non-self-governing territories. For me, this Australian outpost was virgin territory. All I knew was that it had been a part of the German Empire from 1884 to 1914. After World War I, it came under Australian rule. New Guinea was rich in gold. Papua was not rich and even more inaccessible. In Canberra, we were briefed by the concerned officials looking after Papua New Guinea. Our first stop was at Port Moresby. We were invited to dinner by the governor. He and his wife had seen better days. They were in Port Moresby on sufferance. The wife was even more prickly about being dumped in a dump called Port Moresby. After dinner, my Iranian colleague asked if he could use the toilet. He was admonished. Here, we do not ask to use a toilet. We say, "Can I go for a walk?" Next day, we embarked on our passage to the unknown and the unseen. A 4-seater Cessna aircraft was at our disposal. We were, to our great surprise, informed that in Papua New Guinea, one either walked or flew. No roads existed. The terrain was covered by very thick, impenetrable forest. No horses, neither cows, buffaloes, or deer. Only pigs introduced by the Japanese during World War II. However, the country is an ornithologist's paradise. Our single-engine plane landed on a strip the size of a football field. At times, it was totally enveloped in thick clouds. I was adventurous, but there were occasions when I felt that our pilot was taking unnecessary risks. If we crashed, it would take weeks to discover the debris. Building even the handkerchief sized tarmacs was a time consuming undertaking. Bricks, machines, steel, and cement were all transported by air. The Australians had done a fantastic job. Their rule was paternalistic, but it had brought education, healthcare, sanitation to a people who, even in 1964, were living in the 10th century. Our first halt was at Mount Hazen, 6,000 feet above sea level. Our tiny plane was flying at 8,000 feet. Fasten your seatbelts, we are about to land. I looked for an airport. None was to be seen. The plane came down on an uneven field not much bigger than a football pitch. It halted a few yards away from the edge of a deep gorge. We were to spend the night with the commissioner who received us at the above mentioned airport. I do not remember his name. He was dressed as a Pakka Sahib in khaki shirt and shorts, matching stockings, and a felt hat that one saw the Gurkhas wearing. The commissioner was an ex-Australian Air Force man. He and his wife were the only whites living several hundred miles away from the nearest town. The mail arrived once a week, weather permitting. There was no doctor for 300 miles. Life threatening accidents and illness were not infrequent, in which case the patient had to be ferried by air in a 4-seater Cessna plane. I asked the administrator if he did not feel utterly lonely. He said that his job kept him busy throughout the year. He could, at certain hours, contact Port Moresby, but not mainland Australia. After retiring from the RAAF, he had needed a job. After dinner, he gave us a fascinating briefing on life in the island, its fauna and flora, its geography, the life of the people, Aborigines, Polynesians, their ways of living. He was the only white man within 200 miles. His sole contact with the world was by radio set, a device to keep in touch with Port Moresby. Often, these did not function. He spoke the local language fluently. Casually, he informed us that the island had 7,000 languages, not dialects, mind you. Without being patronizing, he said that Australian policy might smack of paternalism, but it was committed to bringing a Stone Age people into the 20th century. The people were primitive, their customs barbaric. They believed in a supernatural world of devils, spirits, sorcery, and ghosts. They used bows and arrows with deadly accuracy. Their diet was simple: cocoa, millet, sago, pigs, and fruit. Betel nut chewing was endemic. Occasionally, jealousy led to cannibalism and murder. Their life had remained static for thousands of years. Did the people wish to stay with Australia? The people did not. Early next morning, we flew to Goroka. The airfield was at 30-degree angle. The plane landed and taxied up the hill, then stopped. The village folk ran and placed stones behind the wheels so that our aircraft would not slide down. A novel experience. The sight we met was not something we were prepared for. The patrol officer, not more than 25 years of age, dressed in a white shirt, shorts, and white stockings, took us to the school. About 20 boys and girls were sitting at little desks reading a lesson in English. On the blackboard was written, "Welcome to our guests." Well, in this little room, in the middle of an inhospitable island, the Stone Age was meeting the 20th century. A few of the parents of the children were looking at our plane, attired in almost nothing. Our task began. We asked through the interpreter the assembled Kuku tribal leader, "Would you like to live under Australia, or would you prefer self-determination or independence?" What followed was farcical. The interpreter translated our UN mandate into pidgin English for the benefit of the second interpreter, who in turn translated the pidgin into the region's language, who then asked the fourth interpreter to put it into the local dialect. The dozen or so native heard him out with incomprehension writ large on their faces. The eldest one grunted a few words which got back to us via the serpentine translator's route. He asks if we could repeat our question. We gave up. Yet, we were not wholly disappointed. We saw the future in the classroom. The weight of the past would be reduced soon. The Australians were dedicated, determined, and driven. They had done much. Much more remained to be done. Our last call was the coastal city of Rabaul, with a fine harbour and a not too intimidating volcano in the background. The climate was bracing. The grown-up sons of the hill tribes were running carpentry shops, first aid stalls, and other small-scale industries. The schools were full. The hospital was modern. Among the places we visited was the beautiful harbour town of Rabaul, Japan's primary naval and military base in the southwest Pacific during World War II. From Rabaul, we went to Guadalcanal, where John F. Kennedy's boat PT-109 had been cut into two by a Japanese bomb. He almost lost his life. Further down is Bougainvillea Island. The name of the flower originates from this island. A large white community populated the town. They were specimens of an era long over. Our mission was finally rewarded. In Rabaul, we talked to men and women who were the first to be educated and had not abandoned their parents, their past, or their tribe. Some were members of village councils and locally elected bodies. Yes, they were ready for self rule. 15 years later, Papua New Guinea would become a member of the United Nations. Thank you for listening this article. Now some of the words and their meanings. Cannibalism, though no longer rampant, had not altogether disappeared. Rampant means of something bad spreading unchecked. Mr. Singh, meet Bluebird. He is just out of jail. He killed the man who was misbehaving with his lady. He ate his victim's heart. He had felt no remorse but had walked to the nearest police post to give himself up. Remorse means deep regret. What was I doing in this big and rugged island north of Australia? I was invited by the Australian government to spend 10 days in Papua New Guinea. I was at the time rapporteur of the UN Committee on Decolonization. Rapporteur means someone chosen by an organization to prepare reports of meetings or to investigate and report on a problem. Our first stop was at Port Moresby. We were invited to dinner by the governor. He and his wife had seen better days. They were in Port Moresby on sufferance. On sufferance means with unwilling permission. The wife was even more prickly about being dumped in a dump called Port Moresby. Prickly means unfriendly and easily offended or annoyed. Next day, we embarked on our passage to the unknown and the unseen. Embark means go on board a ship or a plane. We were, to our great surprise, informed that in Papua New Guinea, one either walked or flew. No roads existed. The terrain was covered by very thick, impenetrable forest. Impenetrable means impossible to pass through or enter. No horses, neither cows, buffaloes, or deer. Only pigs introduced by the Japanese during World War II. However, the country is an ornithologist's paradise. Ornithologist means a person who studies or is an expert on birds. Building even the handkerchief-sized tarmacs was a time-consuming undertaking. Bricks, machines, steel and cement were all transported by air. Tarmac means an area of ground covered with a hard surface. After dinner, he gave us a fascinating briefing on life in the island, its fauna and flora, its geography, the life of the people, aborigines, Polynesians, their ways of living. Fauna and flora. Fauna means all animal life. Flora means all plant life. Aborigines means a person, animal or plant that has been in a country or region from earliest times. Casually he informed us that the island had 7,000 languages, not dialects, mind you. Dialect means a form of a language that people speak in a particular part of a country. Without being patronizing, he said the Australian policy might smack of paternalism, but it was committed to bringing a Stone Age people into the 20th century. Patronize means to speak to or behave towards someone as if they are stupid or not important. Smack of something means to be a sign of something bad. to be strikingly reminiscent of something. Paternalism means in an outwardly benevolent but often in a controlling way. Their diet was simple: cocoa, millet, sago, pigs, and fruit. Betel nut chewing was endemic. Endemic means regularly occurring within an area or community. Early next morning, we flew to Goroka. The airfield was at a 30-degree angle. The plane landed and taxied up the hill. Taxied means of an aircraft move slowly along the ground. Well, in this little room, in the middle of an inhospitable island, the Stone Age was meeting the 20th century. Inhospitable means of an environment harsh and difficult to live in. What followed was farcical. Farcical means very silly, unlikely, or unreasonable. The interpreter translated our UN mandate into Pidgin English for the benefit of the second interpreter, who in turn translated the Pidgin into the region's language. Pidgin means a language that has developed from a mixture of two languages. Example, Butler English. The dozen or so native heard him out with incomprehension writ large on their faces. Writ large means clear and obvious. The eldest one grunted a few words which got back to us via the serpentine translator's route. Grunt means make a low, short, guttural sound. Guttural means harsh sound produced in the throat. Our last call was the coastal city of Rabaul with a fine harbor and a not too intimidating volcano in the background. The climate was bracing. Bracing means fresh and invigorating. Invigorating means making one feel strong, healthy, and full of energy. Further down is Bougainvillea Island. The name of the flower originates from this island. A large white community populated the town. Populated means inhabited. Thank you for listening.